Magandang araw. This is our discussion of module number 8 in our BAM 242 subject. And our lesson title is Recto Law, Maceda Law, and the Condominium Act. The following are our lesson objectives. At the end of this module, you can state pertinent laws applicable to sale of real property and personal property on installment. And number 2, understand laws applicable to sale of subdivisions and condominiums. So our productivity tip, everyone wants to be successful. One way to attain success is to make sure that you win your everyday battles. So no matter how slow, progress is progress. My challenge for you today is never let go of this module unless you are done. Happy learning. So let's talk about our lesson review. The Recto law covers contract of sale of personal property by installments. This is Act number 4122. It is also applied to contracts purporting to be leases of personal property with option to buy when the lessor has deprived the lessees of the possession or enjoyment of the thing. Okay. So it forms part of the Civil Code, specifically Article 1484 to Article 1486, and it covers sales of personal property on installment basis. Please take note that when we talk about recto law, we are pertaining to contracts of sale of personal property because this is the main difference between recto law and Maceda law. Pag recto law, RP, recto, personal property, RP, Republic of the Philippines. Ayan, para matandaan nyo. Maceda law talks about, eto, it is a special law enacted by Congress, particularly Republic Act 6552. Okay, it governs installment sales of real property. So again, the main difference between the two, yung isa personal property, yung isa real property. So Maceda law, real property in installment. Sale of real property in installment. Ayan. So, meron po tayo sa papag-aralan, yung Presidential Decree 957, otherwise known as the Subdivision and Condominium Buyers Protective Decree. Ayan. So, let's talk about the what I know chart. Please answer that. So, post this for a while. Welcome back. Now, let's talk about our main lesson. Look here, Recto law, installment sales law. This law covers contracts of sale of personal property by installment, like I said a while ago. So remember that the thing involved is personal property. Examples of personal properties are cars, appliances, gadgets, toys, shoes, clothes, etc. So what are the remedies of vendors in sale of personal property payable in installment? Ano-ano daw yung mga remedies ni vendor sa sale ng personal property na payable in installment? So Article 1484, in a contract of sale of personal property, the price of which is payable in installment, the vendor may exercise any of the following remedies. Una, syempre specific performance. Ito tayo ha. Iba na pag-aralan natin sa BAM 026, one of the modes of extinguishment of obligation is payment or performance. Now, kapag halimbawa, magsusu yung vendor, okay? So, since contract of sale is bilateral, kapag yung vendor nag-deliver na, syempre, kailangan na ni buyer na bayaran. So, in that case, si buyer na yung may obligation to pay. Therefore, siya na yung naging talagang debtor. So, if that's the case, pwede siyang hablahan ng specific performance so that the vendor may exact fulfillment should the buyer fail to pay. What is the general rule? If availed of, the unpaid seller cannot anymore choose other remedies. Yun lang yung downside niya, no? Kasi kapag ang pinili mo is specific performance or the exact fulfillment, if you are the creditor, then you have no other choice. Hindi po pwede na yung exact fulfillment. At the same time, you want the thing back. Hindi po pwede yung babawiin mo na yung gamit, tapos gusto mo bayaran ka pa. But there is an exception. If after choosing it has become impossible rescission may be pursued. So, kung talagang imposible na mabayaran ka, then pwede na yung rescission ng contract. Remember kasi, rescission is always the last resort. Okay, so let's talk about rescission as remedy. Rescission, this is the cancellation of the sale. This is if buyer fails to pay 2 or more installments and is deemed chosen when letter A, notice of rescission is sent, takes possession of subject matter of sale, and files action for rescission. Okay. Kailan daw po pwede na rescission yung piliin? Kapag daw yung buyer nag-fail na magbayad ng 2 or more installments. What about foreclosure? What is foreclosure? Ito na yung iilitin na, ipo-foreclose na. Okay, so foreclose the chattel mortgage on the thing sold if one has been constituted. Should the vendee's failure to pay cover 2 or more installments. So in this case, he shall have no further action against the purchaser to recover any unpaid balance of the price. Any agreement to the contrary shall be void. Okay, so again, foreclosure or iilitin na. What is chattel mortgage? Alam mo pag halimbawa, bumili ka ng brand new car, yun ay naka-chattel mortgage. Okay. Kasi di ba, ano nga ba ang assurance na mababayaran mo yung sasakyan na sa loob ng 5 years, na installment halimbawa for 5 years. So, anong assurance na mababayaran mo? Ano yung security na panghahawakan nila? So, ang nangyayari, chattel mortgage yung pinakamaganda. Ano ba ibig sabihin nun? Yung mismo sasakyan, yung nakaprenda. Kaya nga ba kapag kayong may-ari, hindi makabayad, okay? Diba yung mismo sasakyan, yun yung babatakin. So, yun yung concept ng chattel mortgage. Ayan. However, kapag binatak na, anong sabi rito? Ayan. Should the vendor's failure to pay cover 2 or more? Ito, in this case, ito siya. In this case, wala na, he shall have no further action against the purchaser to recover any unpaid balance of the price. So once na nabatak na yung sasakyan, hindi mo na po pwedeng singilan kasi nga, yung nga, nabatak mo na yung sasakyan. So either lugi ka o hindi as creditor because, halimbawa, because of too much depreciation, yung mabilis ang depreciation, no? Ang point lang dito, you cannot recover any unpaid balance. And if in case there is an agreement, then that will be void. Ayun. So, talaga siya pwede against public policy. So, these remedies are alternative. Choosing any of the three, you will waive your right to choose other remedies. So, tanong, pwede mo bang piliin yung specific performance at saka yung rescission at the same time? The answer is no. Foreclosure and rescission, the answer is no. So, dito, either of the three. Kapag kung ano napili mo, i-waive mo na iba. So, ano to? Personal property in installment. So, let's talk about Maceda law or realty installment value. Properties covered by Maceda law in all transactions or contracts involving the sale or financing of real estate or installment payment. So, sale of financing of residential condominium apartments. Ayan, kasama yan sa Maceda law. Ibang paano po yan? Meron pang Condominium Act. Ayan, alam nyo, ano yan? Basta applicable sa isang bagay, regardless of maraming law na pinagkunan, wala namang problema doon. So, lagay dito sa coverage, expressly stated in the law na yung sale or financing of residential condominium apartments. Again, residential. Di basta condominium, ha? Sabi, residential condominium apartments. Ayan. So, take note of that. Hindi lahat ng condominiums residential. Okay, so not included in the coverage of Maceda law, industrial lots, commercial buildings, and sales to tenant. Alam nyo kasi, yung Maceda law, in light yun na ayaw ng gobyerno na mawala ng tahanan ang bawat Pilipino. na kapag hindi makabayad ng installment, yung mga mapapalayas na sa sariling tahanan. Yun yung reason ng mga panahon na yon kung bakit nagkaroon ng Maceda Law at winelcome talaga itong batas na to. And protection nito sa bawat pamilyang Pilipino para hindi sila mawala ng tahanan. Okay. That's why, Maceda Law, hindi included ang industrial lots kahit real property yun. Hindi included ang commercial buildings kahit na real property yun. Ayan, tsaka yung sales to tenants. Okay, so tuloy lang natin to. Who are covered by the Maceda Law? Ito daw. One was paid at least 2 years of installment in all transactions or contracts involving the sale and or financing of real estate on installment payment. Ano pa? One who has purchased any of the properties enumerated above but who has paid less than 2 years of installment. Okay, so ito yung mga covered ng Maceda Law. So, stated differently, buyers are entitled to a refund as well as grace period so long as they have paid for at least 2 years. So, tingnan nyo, hindi lang basta-basta grace period ha. Entitled pa sila sa refund provided that they have paid for at least 2 years. Let's talk about defaulting. Ano ba yung defaulting? Buyers who defaulted on their payments of installment are entitled to pay without additional interest the unpaid installment due within the total grace period they have earned. Ayan. Okay, so ayan. Sabi rito, halimbawa, nag-default ka sa pagbabayad ng installment, kapag ka, ah, kapag ka naka-earn ka na ng mga grace period, no? Ang sabi rito, pag nagbayad ka ng unpaid installment mo, wala kang babayarang additional interest. Okay. So, mamaya, ano ba sabi rito? This total grace period, ito pala yung grace period, have been fixed at the rate of 1 month grace period for every 1 year of installment payment made. Ayan. So, halimbawa, 1 year ka nang nakakabayad, naka-earn ka ng 1 month grace period. 2 years ka nakakabayad, naka-earn ka ng 2 months grace period. So, halimbawa, na-default ka. Dalawang buwan ka na default ng bayad. So, dahil naka-earn ka ng 2 months ng grace period, yung 2 month na yun na magbabayad ka, interest-free. Okay ba yun? So, yun. Pero, ang sabi rito, pasubali, however, the right can only be exercised by the buyer once in every 5 years of the life of the contract and its extension. So, hindi naman yan palagian. Ang sabi, you can only exercise this right every 5 years, once in every 5 years. Let's talk about contract cancellation. If the contract is canceled, the seller shall refund to the buyer the cash surrender value of the payments on the property, which is equivalent to 50% of the total payments made. After 5 years of installment, an additional 5% for every year of payments will be added, but not to exceed 90% of the total payments. So for this to apply, the actual cancellation of the contract must take place 30 days after receipt by the buyer of the notice of cancellation. This notice of cancellation or a demand for rescission that must be by a notarial act and upon the full payment of the aforementioned cash surrender value to the buyer. So if there is, for example, cancellation, okay, yung notice ay dapat ma-receive, syempre, ni buyer. At the same time, kailangan isole ni seller yung cash surrender value ng payment of the property, which is, yun nga, 50% of the total payment made. Meron pa dito sinabi na additional 5% for every year of payments will be added. Pero hindi pwede na 90% yung mabalik. Usapan natin yung PD 957. Ito yung mga dapat nating malaman dito. Yung National Housing Authority, Ano ba to? It shall have exclusive jurisdiction to regulate the real trade and business, the real estate trade and business. Owner and real estate dealer shall observe the following procedures if they want to engage in real trade and business. Una, syempre, the owner of the real estate dealer interested in the sale of lots or units respectively in such a subdivision project or condominium project shall register the project with the authority by filing therewith a sworn registration statement. So, ito, ano yung pinag-uusapan natin? O, di ba? Kapag ka daw yung owner or dealer, no, gustong mag-engage sa real trade and business, ano daw ba yung mga kailangan nilang i-observe? Siyempre, yung National Housing Authority, kailangan mag-submit sila ng sworn registration statement. Siyempre, kailangan mag-obtain sila ng license to sell. Okay? So, magbibigay rin sila ng adequate performance bond. Why? Kasi hindi sila mabibigyan ng lisensya pag hindi sila nagbigay ng bond. Ano pa? However, pasubali, Section 7 provides that the following are exempted from obtaining license to sell and from the filing of performance bond. Ayan, sale of subdivision lot resulting from the partition of land among co-owners and co-heirs. Kasi di ba hindi naman din talaga sila regularly na yan talaga yung hanap buhay nila. Nagkataon lang na itong mga co-heirs at saka co-owners ng land, they have decided to subdivide it among themselves and then to finally sell it to other people. So therefore, they don't need to get a license to sell and neither should they have to give an adequate performance bond to the National Housing Authority. Ano pa? Letter B, sale or transfer of subdivision lot with original purchaser thereof and any subsequent sale of the same lot. So kung subdivision owner ka or you are the original purchaser, if you wish to alienate the same to another person and we're talking about the same lot, then there is no need to obtain license to sell or furnish NHA an adequate performance bond. Ano pa? Yung sale of subdivision, letter C, sale of subdivision lot or a condominium unit by or for the account of a mortgagee in the ordinary course of business when necessary to liquidate a bona fide debt. Let's talk about suspension of license to sell. Okay, kailan ba nasususpend yung license to sell? Siyempre, upon a verified complaint filed by a buyer or through NHA own initiative. Yun lang yung ibig sabihin ng motu proprio. By its own initiative. Alam mo, yung kusa na ng NHA na isuspend yung license to sell. O diba, sabi natin kanina, bago makapagbenta ng subdivision condominium, dapat meron silang license to sell. Ay itong license to sell na to, hindi nila yun makukuha kapag hindi sila nagbigay ng adequate performance bond. Alam mo, nabigyan na sila ng license to sell. Pwede ba itong ma-revoke? The answer is yes. Pwede ba itong masuspend muna? Suspension mo na lang pala muna yung pinag-uusapan natin dito. The answer is yes. So, paano? Pag may nagsumbong, hindi naman basta sumbong lang. Ang sabi dito, verified complaint. Pag sinabi natin verified complaint, ito talaga ay signed by the complainant himself. Ayan. Next is, NHA may motu proprio or by its own initiative, kusa niya nalaman na imbestigahan niyang kusa na hindi naman ala na nagre-reklamo sa kanya. Ayan. So, yan. Pwede siya mag-suspend. Ayan. Pwede rin ba niya i-lift yung suspension order? The answer is yes. Of course, kailan daw ba? Siyempre, kapag yung authority ay nakumbinsi nila that the registration statement is accurate or the deficiency has been corrected or supplemented. The revocation of registration, certificate, and license to sell. Pwede daw bang mag-issue ng order of revocation? Oo naman. Hindi naman porket nabigay na yung license to sell doesn't mean na it's forever. So there are instances na pwede nga masuspend. Then, pwede rin talagang ma-revoke. So ano ba yung mga grounds para ma-revoke? Sabi, it shall appear there is a satisfactory evidence that the owner or dealer is insolvent. has violated any provision of this decree or any applicable rules or regulation of the authority or any undertaking. Ano pa? Has been or is engaged or is about to engage in fraudulent transactions. Pwede na palang ma-revoke pagka ganun, yung bang has been dati, engage ngayon, o mag-i-engage pa lang, about to engage yun. Has been or is engaged or is about to engage in fraudulent transactions. So has made any misrepresentation sa kanilang prospectus, brochure, ayan. Ano pa? Meron silang bad business reputation and does not conduct his business in accordance with law or sound business principles. So, mare-revoke yung kanilang license. The registration of dealers, brokers, and salesmen. So, alam nyo naman na hindi po pwedeng magtinda na mag-engage sa sale ng real property and condominiums unless there is yung tinatawag natin nga na license from the NHA. Same naman yan. They want to engage in the business of selling subdivision lots or condominium, they have to register themselves with NHA. So revocation of registration as dealers, brokers, and salesmen. Of course, we have different grounds for revocation. First, there is a violation of any provision of this decree or any rule or regulation made hereunder. Merong material false statement sa kanyang application. Siyempre, guilty ng fraudulent acts in connection with any sale of the subdivision or condominium and has demonstrated his unworthiness to transact the business of dealer, broker, salesman as the case may be. Broker, salesman as witness to sales. Pwede daw ba silang mag-witness sa sale? Sila yung broker at sila yung salesman. Ano ang sagot natin? The broker or salesman who negotiated the sale of a subdivision lot or condominium unit shall act as one of the witnesses to the sale document. Ayan. So, talaga pala na mag-a-act sila as one of the witnesses to the sales documents with an indication of his certificate of registration number and renewal date. If the sale was directly made by the owner or dealer, the fact must be so stated in the sales document. So, non-forfeiture of payments, no installment payment made by a buyer in a new or existing subdivision or condominium project for the lot or unit he contracted to buy shall be forfeited in favor of the owner or developer. So, ang lino nito wala daw installment payment ang pwedeng ma-forfeit in favor of the owner or developer. But, eto when the buyer, after due notice to the owner or developer and clearance from the board, desists from further payment due to the failure of the owner or developer to develop the project according to the approved plans and within the time limit for complying with the same. Such buyer may at his option be reimbursed the total amount paid including amortization interest, but excluding delinquency interest thereon at legal rate. Kasi di ba may mga pangako minsan yung developer na kesyo lalagyan nilang basketball court, swimming pool. Yun yung mga dahilan minsan kung bakit yung buyer ni just bumili. Kasi may mga magagandang amenities tapos hindi naman pala nila ilalagay. So if that's the case, there's a failure on the part of the owner or developer to develop the project according to the approved plans. Ayan. So if that's the case, the buyer may, at his option, be reimbursed the total amount paid, including amortization interests, pero excluding delinquency interest. Alright, so now that we've already finished the discussion of module number 8, we will be having our quiz on Monday, and I hope that I will also check all the SAS on Monday. So, 6 to 7 yung quiz natin, and that the coverage is lahat ng SAS na hindi na-cover until SAS See you all sa Monday and have a great evening ahead.